Philosophy. Jean-Paul Sartre. Existentialism is Humanism is one of the most well-known works of Jean-Paul Sartre, a French philosopher, novelist, and playwright. The work is a written version of a famous lecture that Sartre gave on the subject of existentialism, and it provides a concise and accurate overview of some of the key ideas in his existentialist philosophy. The book was written with the intention of defending existentialism against common misconceptions and criticisms. In the introduction of the book, Sartre explains that his goal is to clear up misunderstandings about existentialism and provide a detailed presentation of what his philosophy actually looks like. He acknowledges that the term existentialism is often used loosely and can be difficult for many people to understand. Throughout the book, Sartre delves deeper into the concepts of existence and essence, freedom and responsibility, and how they relate to human existence. The book is considered a classic of existentialist literature, and it is still widely read and studied today. It provides a thought-provoking and accessible introduction to Sartre's existentialist philosophy, making it a valuable resource for anyone interested in learning more about this important philosophical movement. In the first part of his lecture, Sartre summarizes a number of objections to existentialism. For example, he states that Christians believe that his theories leave humanity without any form of morality, while communists argue that his theories leave individuals completely paralyzed and thus delay the revolution. Overall, Sartre gives the impression that existentialism has a somewhat negative reputation in France at the time. Sartre also acknowledges that he understands the critics' confusion, as the term existentialism is used very loosely at the time, making it difficult for people to understand what it is all about. He explains that the meaning of the term is not clear, and that's why people have different opinions about it. In order to explain existentialism, Sartre introduces the concepts of existence and essence. He uses the example of a paper knife to illustrate that objects have a certain essence before they exist in the world. When manufacturing a paper knife, one must have already considered the function of the object and its form before it is created. Therefore, the nature of the paper knife is already given in advance, its essence precedes its existence. If one believes in God, something similar can be said about human beings. God must have designed humans with a specific purpose, so they can be compared to the paper knife. However, if one does not believe in God, as Sartre does not, this comparison is no longer valid. Humans are not created with a specific purpose, they simply exist in the world and are defined by their choices. In the case of human beings, existence precedes essence. The fact that human existence precedes its essence means, in the first place, that we are fully responsible for ourselves and our own choices. However, Sartre also argues that there is a universal element in our freedom. We are not only responsible for ourselves, but also for humanity as a whole. When we make a choice, we are also stating that we believe that this choice is valuable. In reality, there is not one of our actions that do not, as it creates the person we want to be, and simultaneously creates an image of the person we believe should be. Sartre, Jean-Paul, Existentialism is a Humanism, 1946, 1979, Vintons Verlag, pp. Therefore, our choices actually create ethical standards that apply to both ourselves and the rest of humanity. In this way, Sartre answers the critics who claim that existentialism means that everything is allowed and that an existentialist world would therefore end in chaos. We do not need God to create an ethical value system, we can do it ourselves through our freedom. Because our life choices involve not only ourselves but also, in a way, the entire humanity, there comes an enormous responsibility with them. This responsibility can be difficult to take on, creating a feeling of anxiety. When making the free choice, one must live with all the consequences and understand that one was the cause of them. Sartre gives an example of a general who makes decisions that can result in the loss of human lives. The responsibility can often seem almost impossible to bear, but nonetheless, the general must take it on. He cannot simply excuse himself by talking about the necessity of war or orders from superiors. It is his decisions and his responsibility. No one else but himself can decide what is right for him to do. In this context, Sartre also brings his famous statement that man is condemned to freedom. Freedom is a fundamental condition of human life, which we cannot change, but it can also be scary to handle because we cannot escape from it and pass the responsibility for our actions away. To illustrate his thoughts on the individual's responsibility, Sartre tells a story about one of his former students who was facing an ethical dilemma and sought advice. The young man lived with his mother, who had been abandoned by his father. His brother had been killed by the Germans during the occupation of France. Therefore, he was considering joining the resistance to oppose the German occupation and avenging his brother's death. However, he also knew that his mother had no one else to rely on and would not be able to manage without him. Therefore, he also considered whether the best decision would be to stay with his mother. According to Satre, it is impossible to say anything general about which of the two choices is the most correct. In both cases, the young man is doing something good for others, but while one choice provides a relatively certain help to a single person, the other choice offers a chance to do something good on a larger scale, but also a risk of simply being killed and dying a meaningless death. There are good reasons to choose both alternatives, but also good reasons to avoid them. Satre uses the story of the young man as an example of the many important decision-making situations in human life, where one cannot find help in universal principles. The young man, for example, cannot choose to say that his choice should be guided by love for others, because both options contain a form of love for others. He cannot say that his choice should be guided by duty, because he has a duty to both his country and his family. He cannot even push the decision onto others, as by seeking advice, he is already making a choice. In the same way, readers must realize that their lives also contain many decision-making situations where they are fully left to themselves when making a decision. It can be incredibly difficult to bear the responsibility, but there is simply no way around it. According to Satre, there are many people who have not realized their freedom to control their own lives, but instead, explain their unhappy situations with references to their circumstances or fate. For example, the eternal single says that he has not found love because the right one has not yet appeared. Satre is very consistent in his rhetoric here. The only thing that matters is what one actually does. If one does not succeed with one's projects or life goals, it is one's own fault, one cannot explain it away. Of course, this thought may seem harsh for those who have not had success in life. But on the other hand, it sets people up to understand that only what are real matters and that dreams, expectations, and hope only serve to define a person as a disappointed dream, a failed hope, and as useless expectations, i.e. defining in a negative and not in a positive way. Sartre, Jean-Paul, Existentialism is Humanism, 1946, 1979, Vinton's publisher, p. 40. Sartre does not directly mention the concept of bad faith in existentialism as humanism, but nonetheless, he provides a detailed account of it in his presentation of people who systematically push responsibility for their own lives away with all sorts of excuses, and in that way maintain themselves in a negative situation. At the conclusion of his lecture, Sartre presents his theory that existentialism is a form of humanism. In other words, he tries to explain how existentialism can be used to justify a humanistic ethic, where people act responsibly towards one another. Based on the idea that freedom is a shared condition for humanity, Sartre argues that through our free choices, we can actually create an ethical value system. Since there is no God, it is up to us to build the ethical value system that we want to see in the world. Every time we make a choice, we are also making a decision about what kind of actions we consider valuable. Sartre also introduces the idea of universalizability, where the individual should reflect on whether their ethical choices can make sense for all of humanity. For example, if I choose to enlist as a soldier, I am also saying with my choice that I accept that other people may make the same decision for their lives. If I think it through, I must realize that I cannot make exceptions for myself when I make a choice. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing.